Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we are seeing another classic today, Double Indemnity.
Yes.
From 1944. Billy Wilder's classic, paradigmatic, perfect example of a film noir.
That's right.
It is the film noir.
And I want to say that we saw it at the Electric at a noon screening, and it was packed, and people applauded at the end. Which is lovely to see.
Yeah, it was nice. I'd never seen it, as is normal with these things. When we visit an older movie, a classic that I'm supposed to have seen, I always haven't. You, I assume, had seen it a lot.
I have seen it, and I have taught this film.
Right, so you're very familiar with it.
I'm going to let you do most of the talking.
Well, I don't know if I will do most of the talking. I didn't hugely get on with it.
Oh, well, you see, that's interesting, so why not?
Well, it's difficult. At no point do I think it's like a bad movie, right? Like, there's a reason that it's a classic, and you can tell. So I don't think like anything about it is really bad. But I feel like I'm not on its wavelength. It's such an example of a style that is of a certain time that maybe I wasn't in the mood for it. I don't know, but only at a few points did I feel like I was into it. Like in the scene where she hides behind the door, for instance. Just that shot, really, where she hides behind the door. It's a couple of shots. I felt the tension in that scene. I thought it was really good. I basically felt like these were kind of thoroughly horrible people who I wasn't particularly entertained by the exploits of.
Oh. Well, I love almost everything about it. I think it's deservedly a great classic. I think it's got things that are just still so extraordinary, really. Not the least Barbara Stanwyck's performance. I mean, there were some moments in this film that I think are as great as anything that's ever been offered by American cinema. You know, the moment where they kill the husband in the car, and the camera closes in on her, and you just have like this glint of a smile, you know. There's a moment where the husband's been thrown off the train, and Fred McMurray tells her to go pick up the crutches, right? And there's the way that she's got her mouth open. It's almost like a sexual glee, really, at this murder that she's just committed, right? Kind of the scenes in the sofa where she's wearing that tight Angora sweater, right? And kind of, and she's playing on him, and you could see both that she's attracted to him, that she's playing him, and also how she's playing him. I mean, I think those are all like absolutely fantastic things, really.
Her performance is pretty incredible, and kind of thoroughly captivating. And when she kind of, when she sort of fully exposes herself as the nasty piece of work, she's kind of been bubbling away at being the whole way through. You kind of feel it, and she's, like I said, I mean, thoroughly unlikable in the best way. Like when that kind of comes out at the end, it's great. It's more him, Fred McMurray, that I had the issue with. I kind of felt like he was stupid. Well, his character, not the actor, but felt like the character was sort of not that bright, really.
Well, he's a chump.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, that's what he is in the movie, right? He's somebody who, at the very beginning of the film, you see that he's aware that she's trying to set him up for murder, right? And he walks away. But then, he's so attracted to her that he lets his dick overrule his head. That's what the film is all about, really.
Yeah. I can sympathise with that.
Well, that's what happens.
But there's a point at which you're going like...
That's why he ends up dead.
I know. Well, I mean, that's like he is that kind of... He does have that film noir thing of already being dead, really, or already being doomed.
Yeah,
you
well,
know.
there's that wonderful line where he says, "I don't hear the footsteps behind me."
It's a great line.
It's a great line.
He couldn't hear his own footsteps, and then as he walks away, you can't hear them either. You know?
It's a film that's full of great lines. That's full of like really quotable lines. You know, how fast am I going? 45. Yeah, that whole dialogue at the beginning is absolutely brilliant, right? And it was wonderful to see the audience completely with it, actually, and responding in all the right places. And actually, there were moments that it's interesting to see it with a proper audience rather than with students, because you catch things that are meant to be played, right? That's the way the film is meant to play, in quotation marks. But actually, you don't see it, and then you watch it with students and you don't see it. And then you watch it with a proper audience, and actually that whole scene with the witness that's brought in who had seen him on the train, right? And there are moments where, you know, just a little reaction from Fred McMurray gets a huge surge of interest from the audience, right? Or when he goes behind him, or, it's like every move in the film is charged with an audience response in a way that I hadn't quite seen it before.
Yeah, a paying audience is looking to enjoy it.
Yeah,
the students are just looking to get home.
Yes. Well, you know, those things.
I know what you mean. Like, it is true actually. That is, the film is full of little important gestures like that. That everything that happens, every move that happens, every time someone looks at someone, every time someone picks up the phone means something. And it's all about kind of control of information, how it reaches you and what certain things mean. Because then you've got Edward G. Robinson kind of putting the story together as he sees it based on information that he gets. And then how does that affect Fred McMurray and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I mean, it was like kind of control of information, the way that you understand everyone's different understanding of where they are in the story is really strong, actually.
Yeah. And I loved Edward G. Robinson.
He's great. He got good reactions from the audience.
And he's so dynamic, and he makes scenes kind of meaningful. He's the only person I can think of who literally cites an actuarial table and kind of, gets the audience to respond to it, right? Like, kind of, it's just amazing that he can do that, really.
That monologue where he's listing all the different versions of poisoning and all that. It's fantastic.
So, and it's full of technical terms and so on, and he's just brilliant, really. And I love the whole kind of relationship between him and Fred McMurray that, Fred McMurray's basically, that line at the end, "I love you," or no, closer than that, and he says, "Oh, I love you too." Yeah, kind of, and the fact that he'd been too close to him to suspect it. I thought all of the way that whole relationship kind of was drawn out was great. I think the score is absolutely fantastic. It's Miklos Rocha. I had to look that up. But it's a beautiful score, It's kind of, it's interesting because you think of it as almost like a modernist score. It's very modern, and of course the film is now, I don't know, 70 years old or whatever, right?
44. 75.
75. Yeah. And the lighting is just fantastic. So, it's the way that you can make sunny California seem like, malodorous and dark, and it's kind of there's something about smells in the film, right? So they often talk about it, right, about the perfume. I bought it in Ensenada. Right? And she kind of wears orchids in one of her outfits, right? Black orchids. And and there's something about the decor and the lighting in the house, in her house, where it really does. It's almost like you can smell it. You can smell evil, and it's seductive. Yeah, I loved all of that.
Yeah. I think it really is just down to the fact that I really didn't like Fred McMurray's character, Walter, and I felt he was kind of aggressively stupid to the point where he even went beyond being just a chump. I think it's partly the fact that he's narrating the story from the end.
Yes.
And so there's this framing structure of he's telling the story into Edward G. Robinson's dictaphone, so like being honest about everything that's happened. So that's your frame device, and that's what gives you narration the whole way through as well, kind of classic.
That's what
film
gives
narration.
it the structure. Yeah.
Yeah, and and kind of the way that he is telling the story is still of kind of somehow being in control. It feels like, like I'm in control of this story. I'm being honest about blah blah blah. Even though it's clear that he's lost, and then as you discover at the end, he's actually been shot in the shoulder, and he knows he's kind of for it. He might not die, but he's definitely going to prison for a long time, or going to be executed. So there's this kind of mismatch between sort of he still delivers this story as though he has control of everything that happened, and of course he completely didn't.
But I think that's what I love about noir. I mean, I see them all as kind of as male melodramas, as like these it's these love stories really of men who are undone by passion, right? I mean, sometimes love, sometimes passion, sometimes obsession, right? All those things that aren't meant to affect men. So, he's got this very measured, very controlled way of telling the story, but that actually everything that the film shows you is the opposite of that. He's out of control. I mean, he's involving himself, in murder. He doesn't need that, right? It's kind of, it's the anklet, that's kind of driving him crazy, really. And I can understand that, right? Like, kind of, so... And what makes it interesting for me about Fred MacMurray playing it is, he's one of the most placid leading men, in the history of cinema. I mean, he's a very good comedian. He's the regular guy. Like, you actually don't see a lot of, undercurrents kind of in his face, right? He seems like a happy-go-lucky guy, and you get the feeling that he really was until he met her,
Yeah. Yeah, he wasn't the biggest star, really, was he, Fred MacMurray? I know he did a lot with Disney.
No, he was a huge star in the 30s and 40s, yeah. I mean, he's not a very well-remembered star because, aside from the 2 films he did for Billy Wilder, this one and The Apartment, not too many of his films have survived. Like, some of them, are like minor classics, like the films he did with Carole Lombard, Swing High, Swing Low, or something like that. But mostly he was just he was a big star.
Okay.
He was one of, I think he was, aside from Bing Crosby, he was Paramount's biggest male star of this whole period. But the films haven't weathered well, though. He's so interesting as well because, I mean, he was a star for a very long time. From the moment that he began in 34, 35. Then he did, then he was a star throughout the classic period. He did stuff for Cirque as well. And then he moved on to Disney and continued making those, Absent-Minded Professor, I forget what they were called, the films.
I'll check for you.
Through the 60s, and they were huge hits. Right, and in the meantime, he did a long-running television show, I think, called All My Sons or My Three Sons or something like that, which was a staple of American television throughout the 50s and 60s, really. So, there was a period in America where everyone would be able to tell you who Fred MacMurray was.
Yeah, he was the Absent-Minded Professor, Shaggy Dog as
That's
well.
right.
Son of Flubber, The Happiest Millionaire.
Yeah, and those were all big hits. Big hits. And I think he gets billed over Stanwyck in this, doesn't he? So that goes to show how big he was.
Well, I think so. Yeah. I mean, he is the star.
So,
yeah. I didn't like how often he said "baby." I think that is an issue with the writing.
Yes.
I don't know if that's seeing it with modern eyes and going, that doesn't seem to sound right, but or whether it kind of would have seemed a little bit weird in 1944 as well. It was like he was saying, "Ooh, groovy, baby."
I know. I think it's the thing that is most alienating to contemporary audiences, the use of that word. And to be honest, I don't know if that was a staple of the period or not. It, no reviewer of the period picks it up as something annoying, right? Yeah. So it must have been standard lingo. I suppose the way that people used to say doll, hey doll, which nobody ever says anymore, and actually you get killed for saying, really. So I can understand that. But actually, it's also a very unsentimental movie. I like that about it, you know.
Well, I mean, there is this idea, again, this is something that's slightly rankled, I suppose, in that she obviously is playing him, but he falls for it completely.
Yes.
And basically from like 2 days into sort of knowing her, he's saying, I love you.
Yes.
And he's doing this because he loves her. And immediately I kind of stopped believing that, you know. And actually by the point later on in the film where he realised he needs to get out of this, he needs to dump her, I'm thinking like he should have realised this long ago, you know. And maybe that's part of the chump thing, but like the love aspect sort of, long before he gives up on that, I felt like it had ended. Him being in love with her.
Well, I don't feel that because I mean the film first of all goes, you know, to quite an extent to give you reasons for him to want to help her, right? So all that line of dialogue about, oh, you know, I don't think she quite says he beats me, but you know, she goes on about.
She pretty much does, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
There you go. So yeah, she goes about how horrible he is to her and so on and so forth. So you know, I mean, she's making him out to be like a knight in shining armor who's going to rescue her, you know, from this horrible condition that, you know, she needs a strong man for. So, you know, the film...
Definitely at that point, I'm going with it. But then as the film progresses, it's really about the intricacies of the plot and then how the story develops and how they're going to get out of it. So it's about those details.
Yes.
And the motivation falls away, I think, from the focus of the film. And so like, there is that one moment where I think it's when they've just done it, and she says, "Aren't you going to kiss me?"
Yes.
You know, and that's like just the night that they've done the murder. And then it doesn't seem to be there at all.
But that's a fascinating moment, you see,
yeah.
because you can tell that for her, the whole murder has been a turn on, right? And for him, he feels he's got a conscience, right?
Yeah.
And actually, it's that contrast between the two that I think is one of the things that the film makes so interesting. And the film, again, goes to great trouble to show you that he does have a conscience, right? You know, the purpose of the daughter is exactly that, right? You know, to show that, you know, he's somebody who's been driven to do a terrible thing, right? Whereas kind of she is capable of anything, really. But it's interesting that he's the one who does the murder, right? So, yeah. So I think you have kind of like a really interesting kind of, you know, complex character, how, you know, Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky all of a sudden halfway through the film becomes a really cold-blooded, premeditated murderer, right? Like, I think that's brilliant. Because actually, I think there are very few films who are so uncompromising. And actually, there are very few actresses who would play the role that Barbara Stanwyck does, the Dietrichson role, without asking for audience sympathy at all, you know? Like, I mean, you know, she shows you her being sexy, you know, and alluring and calculating and murderous and, you know, but kind of you never see her just being nice, you know? Like, so I think that still stands up. I think it's absolutely brilliant, really. And a good point of comparison, you know, because both so Double Indemnity and Joan Crawford are both based on James M. Cain novels, you know.
Double Indemnity and Joan Crawford.
Sorry, Double Indemnity and...
The Postman Always Rings Twice.
The Postman Always Rings Twice, but what I'm thinking of is the one where Joan Crawford starts the chain of restaurants, the Michael Curtiz film.
Mildred Pierce.
Mildred Pierce.
Right.
So all these three were based on James M. Cain novels. And actually, I think this is the one that is most uncompromising, that's darkest, you know.
Well, I have a line from what's his face at the Hayes office.
Oh.
This is off Wikipedia. There's Cain's novella that's published, and then it goes out to the studios. MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount, 20th Century Fox, and Columbia were all competing to buy the rights for $25,000. Then a letter went out from Joseph Breen at the Hayes office, and the studios withdrew their bids at once. In it, Breen warned, quote, "The general low tone and sordid flavour of this story makes it, in our judgment, thoroughly unacceptable for screen presentation before mixed audiences in the theatre. I'm sure you will agree that it is most important to avoid what the code calls the hardening of audiences, especially those who are young and impressionable to the thought and fact of crime.
Well,
Yeah.
boo-hoo. Well, this one is like...
That's right.
This one managed it. And it does so... I love the way that it sublimates all the sexuality. So, and the cheapness. So on the one hand, you have that poof on her shoe, right? Yeah. Which kind of, I don't know, that poof evokes a world, really, particularly with the anklet next to it, right?
And it's the way that she crosses her legs.
The way that she crosses her legs. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but she's got too much jewelry. And it's all big and flashy and kind of at odds with each other. It's like too much, really. Yeah, so that gives you an indication of where she's from, right? And what she wants. I think it's almost like every detail in the film is beautifully worked out. The only thing that annoys me, and that I still think is a problem, and is the subplot with the daughter.
Particularly with the daughter. What, everything that the daughter does, or
I think everything that the daughter does is so. If we try to distinguish between the character and the actress, maybe the character is necessary, right? And actually, I think really the character is necessary. Particularly with Zacchetti, the boyfriend, right? But I find the actress so annoying who plays Lola, that it irritates me.
She's a bit Anne Hathaway.
Yes, she is.
She's a bit sort of trying sort of so very hard. I'm acting. Who was the actress? Jean Heather.
I don't know her.
I don't think she did very many films. She did 8 feature films during the 40s. I think she had a car accident, and that sort of ended her career, because I think they went, well, you're ugly now. As Hollywood want to do.
Anyway,
yeah, I know what you mean, but I think you're right that the subplot is necessary. The character is necessary to give Walter the kind of the good sort of person to start to cling on to a little bit, and to feel terrible about what he's done.
I love also the cinematography, the way. So for example, there's the scene where they kill each other, where they shoot each other at the end. That obviously is just completely enshrouded in shadows and so on. But if you look at the rest of the film, there's shadows everywhere. So, and at the beginning of the film, they're very fleeting, right? So, he's a hat in the doorway or things like that, right? And then kind of as the film advances, kind of the world becomes kind of, darker and darker. Yeah. Yeah. So I love that. Yeah.
That scene in the house at the end when the gun's there. I noticed the light in there. When she looks at the door and then she closes it and turns out the lights, and all of a sudden you notice the moonlight coming in. That just changes the way everything looks, and as she moves, because she moves sort of past the couch and round it, and then back again to the armchair, and she kind of moves into light and out of light and into light, and light just picks up certain parts of her, and then it's wonderful the way just the way that looks, and all of a sudden things are kind of changing, and then she finds her place in the armchair, just overseeing this entire scene that she's got set up for herself. And of course he comes in the door in that hat, in the silhouette, and the film starts off with a similar image, doesn't it?
It does.
Over the opening titles, it's just a man. Is he on crutches?
He's on crutches.
Isn't the first
which
time,
is
yeah.
like, I think that's the image of the film, really, kind of a man on crutches, kind of. And actually it's very interesting that it's both her husband and her lover, right? And kind of they're both impotent in relation to her. Right? That's kind of it's really, I think that's a great touch.
It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards and won 0. It was nominated for Best Picture, lost to Going My Way. Nominated for Best Director, lost to Liam McCarey for Going My Way. You were talking up Liam McCarey a little while ago when we were doing the...
Well, I like him except when he's doing Catholic propaganda. I mean, he's one of the great screwball directors. But, The Bells of St. Mary in particular, which is the sequel to Going My Way, it's just out and out Catholic propaganda, and I despise it.
Barbara Stanwyck lost Best Actress to Ingrid Bergman for Gaslight.
Yes. I love Ingrid Bergman in Gaslight, but this is a much greater performance, I think.
Who else have we got? Best Screenplay was lost again to Going My Way.
Well, it's a great screenplay. There's no question about it, really. It's a great, great movie. And I was really delighted to see how it played, with a paying audience today. And it's kind of a movie that I never cease of tiring, and I always kind of, notice something new in it. As I said, this time it was those elements of Stanwyck's performance, really. Kind of, the way that after the murder, she runs towards McMurray with just like her mouth kind of, hanging open, like it's as if she's just ready to have sex, really. It's kind of quite amazing.
The audience annoyed me.
Today, why?
They were making so much fucking noise.
Well, that's a problem. That is, I agree.
There's
with
one
you.
thing at Cineworld where they sell popcorn and shit, but there's quite another at the Electric where they sell cups of tea and that's it. And everyone was opening fucking boiled sweets, it seemed like, and taking ages doing it, like thinking they were being quiet by doing it slowly, and actually they were just prolonging the pain.
Well, it's probably like a crowd that went out last night and has a hangover.
Well, it made me very angry.
It was a noon screening.
But it was a one-off. It wasn't like they weren't just seeing the latest thing. The whole point was he was seeing.
I know, but there were a couple of people who kept going to the toilet, right? Not once, but many times, and you think like,
No,
anyway,
just the opening sweets, man. Just keep it to yourself. Just eat quieter food. Just a bit of bread.
All right, so would you recommend this movie?
Well, I mean, I guess I would, despite the fact that I would probably need another crack at it, really. I mean, there are definitely things I appreciate, and I would give it a second go. But I mean, but it is the case that I didn't hugely go on with it outside of a few scenes that I liked, or a few shots, or a few lines here and there. Kind of every time Edward G. Robinson came on, he kind of lit up the screen. I wanted to hear what he had to say. I knew he'd have some fun. I mean, it's a very witty script. Every line he has ends with some barb, or some snappy line. So I'd give it another shot at some point, but I didn't hugely get on with it. I wonder if it is just not my style, really.
Maybe it's just been so influential that
there is an element of that. I've seen it. I've seen the style parodied and echoed so much that it's not original anymore in this, and like, despite the fact this is kind of the prime example.
Yes, this is where it originated, or a lot of those things originated.
Yeah.
No, I still love it, and actually, kind of, there's a beauty to the symmetry of the screenplay. Like the thing with the matches. And how at the end it's Edward G. Robinson lighting matches for him. I mean, there's just so many touches, really, that,
How does he do that match trick?
Well, you can't do that with contemporary matches, let me tell you. But I think we now have safety matches. They don't automatically light up in your pocket like Edward G. Robinson says.
That's the problem.
Anyway, shall we wrap up here?
Yeah, I reckon so.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube, Twitter and Facebook, and eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Yes. And if you get a chance to see Double Indemnity on a big screen with a paying audience, do.
Yeah, it was a nice full screening, and despite the fact that they all ate the wrong food, that was good.
All right, bye-bye.